Welcome to In the Doghouse. You got me and Dakota today. We're Sans Kiefer. Before we dive into today's episode, In the Doghouse is brought to you by Beck Bodie. For all your financial planning and investment management needs, look to the experts at Beck Bodie. Investing your money with their team means that you have a group of dedicated professionals committed to helping you achieve your most cherished financial goals. Visit beckbodie.com to learn more. And listen, Ash and I have been investing with Beck Bodie for the last several years, and they handle all of our financial planning. They are amazing. They handle several of the premier CrossFitters' money as well. So you'll be in good hands. And with all that being said, how are you today, Dakota?
I'm doing good. Nice little rest day. Hit the track with all the ladies this morning.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Very
tried
nice.
to just be like right in the middle there. Hi, Ivy. Hey.
There's Ivy.
State
Hi, Bob.
champ. Let's go.
Love you. She's going to gymnastics practice right now. There you go.
Yep.
There's your Nevada level 3 state champion on bars and vault. Yep, she's a stud. So no real big news to talk about.
No, just like, a couple things happened.
So obviously most people by now know what has happened to Ricky Garard, who is obviously an underdog and one of the athletes that I coach, and someone who obviously is near and dear to our athlete family's heart. Came out with his YouTube video yesterday where he talked about the mountain biking accident that he had last weekend and his surgery that he had this past Monday. And unfortunately, he will be missing the 2023 season, which obviously is devastating for Ricky. It's devastating for us here at Underdogs and myself personally, because I think Ricky was really set up for a good run to win the CrossFit Games. And you don't get to say that very many times about people. And obviously I think it's a big hit for the sport. In general on the men's side. I think the drama that we saw with Roman and Ricky and Justin last year at the games, the drama that we saw down at Wodapalooza with Ricky and Roman, and their ability to bring the best out of each other. And I think we were in store for another year of that with those three gladiators going at each other. I won't spend a ton of time on it today. Obviously, I am, other than probably Benny, Ricky's brother and Michelle, I would say myself and Snorri, his agent, are probably the closest people to him. And I've been, I've obviously had a chance to kind of let this set in over the last 10 days. I've known for a while. I went through my mourning period, you could say. I think there was something that, initially, obviously it was a gut shot, it was devastating to hear when he told me. And initially we didn't know the extent of the injury. But whenever Ricky tells me he's going to get an MRI or an X-ray, that guy, if he's going to do that, it's probably pretty serious. When the news came, back that the MRI showed pretty extensive damage and, grade 3 evidence of grade 3 separation. I knew pretty immediately that we were talking about a season ender and we were talking about surgery. And so I pretty quickly started my focus towards next year and just trying to, get him on, as positive as possible, thinking about the fact that, the surgeon said it's surgery he'll come back 100% from, one that's very common and one that he should have no issues with, 4 to 6 months down the line. Once he's 100%, he should be good to go. And one of the things that Kiefer actually talked about, because, initially I was yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was, I was upset, obviously, and I love Ricky. Don't get me wrong, but I was obviously like, oh my gosh, really, like mountain biking accident, et cetera. And Kiefer and I talked about it, and Kiefer said, listen, part of what makes Ricky who Ricky is that air of invincibility, that kind of God complex that he
Yeah.
walks around with, that, he is impenetrable ultimately, and he's been mountain biking since he was a kid. He used to do it. He used to race, I mean, he obviously, he's very good at it. I mean, he wins all the bike events, pretty much at the games, etc. And this wasn't something out of the ordinary for him. It was something that he is very comfortable on and something that he does all the time. Um, Now, does that mean obviously that you look at it and you wish you wouldn't have done it? Yeah, of course, but I think it's very tough when you have an alpha like that, an athlete of his caliber, and someone with that personality. To tell them not to do something, or to tell them to not do something where they feel fulfilled in their lives, that's a hard thing to do. Um, the one thing I will say is that now that this has happened, I think that the choices that he makes moving forward, I think that he will be very cognizant of the goals in mind. I don't think that any decision will be made lightly, and it's something that we talked about, where it was, listen, every decision that we make moving forward, uh, you know, whether that means, uh, you know, going on a snowboarding trip, going on a mountain biking, going out to dinner with your friends. At this point, like, every single decision you make, you need to ask yourself, is this helping me? Is this a positive step towards my goal of winning the CrossFit Games? If it is, then okay, do it. If it's not, if there's any hesitation in your mind, then it's probably not a good decision. And that was something that he and I talked about, and obviously, what he and Snorri and I talked about. Um, so, the positive thing here is that surgery went extremely well. The doctor was very, very happy. Um, they were also able to complete the surgery with only making one small incision. Usually, a surgery like that, there's three incisions, and generally that will increase the risk of scar tissue and inflammation, et cetera. And so the surgeon was extremely happy with that. And it was a situation where they feel like, he will be back to 100%, looking at 4 to 6 months. Which is obviously great, and which obviously, brings, if you look at the long-term schedule, it brings in things like, Rogue or Dubai or Down Under. But really and truly, if we're being honest about it, I've kind of circled Wadapalooza as that competition. He won it this past year. It would be a really cool story for that to be the one that he comes back on and tries to defend. And I also think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of trying to come back too early, because at the end of the day, there really is no reason to. The bottom line is, you're missing this season. The goal is to win the games next year. You got 14 months, 15, 16 months until the next games. You know what I mean? So there's no reason to rush. And we have seen the precedent has been set, and she had an even shorter period of time. But if you look, at the 2021 CrossFit Games, where Brooke Wells had that catastrophic elbow
The
injury.
elbow.
Yeah, and she was able to come back, the next year, and finish fifth at the games. So I think, and you look at what she did. She made all the right choices as far as not coming back too early, not coming back for off-season events too early, and she was able to get strong enough to obviously compete extremely well at the games. And so that's what we're looking at right now. For those who are, I, I've really been, it's been a mixed bag. I appreciate all the people, obviously, who have been understanding and sent me, I've had a ton of people send me texts saying, that they were, kind of like their condolences for the season, obviously, but really just wishing Ricky the best. And, one of the things though, and I'll, I'm not going to harp on it a lot, but I am still, astounded at the amount of, negative and just mean-hearted posts that I see
That's
on
crazy.
social media.
Crazy.
It's just amazing to me. You got someone who just suffered a very serious injury. No matter what you think of the guy, if you don't like him, just don't say anything. But to actually like take the time to say something rude and mean to someone who just had surgery, it's just unbelievable to me. And I think to myself how miserable those people must be in their own lives. And it's kind of disturbing. But anyway, that's me on my soapbox for a minute. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say a fucking thing. That's all I have to say. But other than that, if you don't know or you want more particulars, go to Ricky's YouTube. He talks about it in detail. Talks about the injury, what happened, and the surgical procedure. And Ricky's going to chronicle his recovery on his YouTube page. He'll have a lot of great content for everyone. And I think it's an interesting story. I think it's a cool story. You'll get to see an elite athlete in their sport who is basically going to show you from surgery all the way to come back. So it's going to be pretty cool.
And if there's anything that we know he can do, it's a comeback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's the coolest, that's the thing that I say is yes, this happened and obviously it's a bump in the road, but the goals don't change. The goal is still to come back and win the games. And, I was on a earlier podcast with Tommy and Sean talking elite fitness earlier today. And that's what we talked about. We talked about the fact that every decision, everything we do from here on is with that thought in mind of winning the 2024 games. And I think he can come back better. I talked about one of Ricky's, if you want to call it weaknesses, right? One of Ricky's weaknesses would be absolute strength, specifically squatting strength. So I was saying his best friend over the next 4 months is going to be that safety squat bar. Because he's not going to be able to do this for a little bit. So he's going to be right in here.
Or that's when you just go to the Globo gym, the 24-hour fitness, and you just start hitting the hack squat, leg press, leg extension. 100%. It's fun. I go there occasionally and just bro out on one of those.
Yeah. Nice. So I think we'll be able to put some strength on his squats. And, when he comes back, I think people can expect that Ricky will be back with a vengeance. So anyway, that's covering that. Moving forward, we had the team and age group qualifiers this last weekend, which were great. You participated in every single aspect of that. So we'll go into that in detail. We currently have one team, North America West, that is currently qualified. I think they're in ninth or 10th, but I think they're one spot out of, there's a 3-way tie for 7th. So I think they're one. Yeah. So I think they're one spot out of that. Have you, I know you guys, did you get your appeal back yet, or what happened?
So we were in 45th. They dropped us to 48th because of the rope climb thing. I sent them like perfectly good screen grabs and explanation. It took them like 3 or 4 days to get back and say, we'll look into it. Okay. But if they give us those reps back, we'll be in like a 3-way tie for 41st or 42nd. Whoa. And then based on, I think they just do highest overall placement.
Yeah.
I think we're placed higher than the other teams. So we'll be like a 41, 42, just hoping that like 1 or 2 teams decide it's too expensive or too far to go.
Yeah. Could be in.
And we could be in. We could have 2 teams going.
There you go.
That'd be nice.
We also have a team in Asia, the Russian team, Kalashnikov team. They won. I believe they won Asia, which is awesome. So it was a very successful underdogs team weekend, and we can get in a little bit more to the actual competition itself. Yeah, there we go.
Wow. I just
Yeah.
got the email actually.
What'd they
I was
say?
I was pulling up my phone. This is crazy. I'm gonna send this to Andrew Hiller. They said that after a review process, it had been denied, as explained earlier. You had like an opportunity to jump up and hop on the rope at the very last
Yeah.
moment, and even though the rounds were continuing, as long as you were up in the air, it was a valid rep. And so I went through, and I mean, I was on my MacBook, and I'm like, click, 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 the tiniest little bit to try and find the moment. And that might seem extreme, but that's why we have the video review process. That's why they have
100%.
the ankle monitors on them to see exactly like whose foot narrowed in front of the other person's foot. And I sent them 3 screen grabs of me in the air at 259, 12, 759, 1459, whatever it was. And they said it's still denied.
How?
As explained, the
Th-
final.
That makes absolutely no
Yeah,
sense.
they sent an attached photo as well. But
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I
we'll see.
that seems pretty strange.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
So it looks like we're for sure gonna have these guys, Rhino CrossFit dogs.
yeah. So we'll have the dogs in, and then obviously, like I said, the Asian squad, and then we've got so the
Oh,
age
age
group
group is
qualifiers.
insane. So many age group.
Yeah, so super cool. It was fun to watch. We have Kendall Gilmore, who Kiefer coaches, who made top 30 in the 16 and 17 women's division or girls division, and then Maya Burrows, who you coach,
Yep. 14
made
to 15.
14th. Yeah, 14th and 14 to 15. So they'll both be prepping for semis. You have Debbie
35
Corwin,
to, oh yeah,
right? Who will
yeah.
be competing in 60 to 64.
Yep.
You have well, Shannon didn't because of her knee, but man, she would have. She could have won 2 or 3 events.
I mean, she literally got first place in the world in both of those gymnastics. If it's anything gymnastics, she's just
Yeah.
untouchable.
We have Colette Casey, one of our coaches, who made top 10, 35 to 39. Stacy Marino, who made top 30, who one of our athletes slash coaches, Matt DeLugo's coaches. And trying to think if we have anybody else. That might be it. But in general, very successful weekend. I'd like to talk a little bit about how you felt about the workouts. We did a pretty big recap of the Indy quarters, so I figure we might as well take a look at the team competition first. Soroka, if you want to pull up the team workouts, and we can go quickly through them. Kind of our thoughts, 1 through 4. Well, it was 1 through 5.
Yeah, double workout.
Right. So first workout being that 15-minute AMRAP of front squats and handstand walks. I think we can all pretty much agree that if you had handstand walk demons, you could absolutely massacre that workout.
Yep.
And really the limiting factor for all the teams was the handstand walk. I think if they had made the front squats a little bit heavier, then it might have gotten nasty with the front squats. But in general, it really did come down because it really did come down to that handstand walk. I mean, we saw it in person where there were a couple of people who just had to take a little bit longer on the handstand walks, and that was the determining factor.
And how they set it up where, you did 2 lanes and it was guy, girl, guy, girl. It was kind of in a way where you could just almost sit and rest and wait for your slower person. So the good old rest was making the good handstand walkers more fresh, and they were just going faster. And so there was kind of that perpetual, issue, I guess you could call it, happening. But I mean, 70, 80 front squats in, there was definitely some fatigue going into the next day. So like that was definitely something to consider when we were looking at the lift and another thruster workout. But during the workout, I mean, we picked the bar up. It was 10 every time, 10 every time, 10 every time. It was just the sit and wait for your one person potentially that's a little slower on the handstand walk.
Yeah. All right. Let's look at number 2. Workout 2. Workout 2 was the alternating pairs, interval workout, row 400, 10 synchro shoulder overhead, and max rope climbs and time remaining. Um, we just talked a little bit about one of the rules there, where if you got, you could work into the, that rest time for your specific group if you got on the rope by 2:59. Apparently, that doesn't sound like it was the case for you guys, but I thought it was a pretty cool workout. It did come down to who were the rope climbing demons. That buy-in was painful, but for the most part, those people who recovered well enough to be able to rope climb, but people who are really, really good at rope climbs, specifically, I think on the women's side, that was a huge place that you could make a massive jump. And there were some ridiculous scores. I mean, we saw some teams get 50 plus. I think it was one team that got 60 plus rope climbs, which is crazy.
Averaging 10 every time. That's like 10 in just a minute and a half, basically every single time. Yeah, the 3 sets of 10 is really what you're looking at for the shoulder to overheads, but you got 3 minutes of rest each time. So I don't think any of the major teams are getting slowed down by that. I mean, it really is just a tiny bit of time buy-in. And then, like when I was watching the first team go, that was Raf's team. I mean, crushing the rope climbs and that last little bit, if you can get 1 or 2 extra steps every time of a quicker switch, that's a whole extra rope climb at the end. If you have that opportunity to jump up there, and I mean, we thought we utilized it perfectly, but better off on Raf's side than mine, apparently.
All right, let's look at number 3.
I guess I can maybe do a quick blame on Kiefer since he's not here, because he was doing the out loud countdown. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, it's your fault, Kiefer. Yeah. We're blaming you. Test 3A was the bar muscle up deadlift. Actually, this is my favorite workout of the weekend. I really liked the combination here. I thought it was very, very challenging. And I liked the sprint workout. And it was one of those things where you kind of had to make a little bit of a decision.
Mm-hmm.
How hard were you going to go on that first one, and kind of take the risk of how much you would have left on the second part.
Yeah.
And we saw obviously the people that specifically the men who went into part B, who were the last person in line of that chipper. Woo,
they got sacrificed 100%.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about it. Because if
massive
you finished
struggle bus.
Yeah, if you finished in 12 minutes or 22 minutes, it didn't matter. You just went right into max reps, clean and jerk at 275, and it was hard to watch for sure. There was lots of pain faces going on there.
Yeah. I thought that one was a fun workout. Again, something that I really like that we do, that we've done in our programming for a while is, we hitting a lot of those, power clean push jerks for reps, at moderately high percentages,
30 seconds max reps, a minute max reps. Yeah.
Yeah. So, people who had that test, hopefully, if they were following our programming, that's something that was beneficial to them. But overall, I really did like this workout. I thought it was cool. And then let's take a look at the final one. So
ouch.
Right?
Can I say it one more time? And ouch.
Shuttle runs and synchro dumbbell thrusters. It was fine. It's not one of my favorites. I kind of felt like, we had seen not something exactly similar, but just the style of it, kind of in that first one with the handstand walks, and the front squats. I thought they could do something a little bit more interesting, again, but it was fine. You did it, and it seemed like it got really, really nasty. Starting, I think it was the tens, got really, really nasty, like the 5 shuttle runs and 10 thrusters. That's where it started to seem to me to where it was starting to get really gross for people.
Yeah. And I'll admit, like for me, that midline was just totally fried. And so this, like I said, ouch, ouch, ouch for me. But I watched a lot of people go through it, and it burned. It had a little fan lung. It had a good pump. But I think they definitely needed something a little bit more in there. Either 7 minutes wasn't quite enough time, or the movements just weren't difficult enough to really like have a big separation of oh shoot, did I just get bumped out?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're yeah.
Or a big enough separation. I think when you look at the leaderboard, there was just so many super tight times.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
And
just think for a quarterfinals test, I felt like, we had seen some type of skill in the first three, and to me, this was, they needed to add something that had a little gusto here. It was not my favorite. I also didn't like the inconsistency of workout one where you could not squat clean the front squat, but this workout you could squat clean the dumbbell thruster. It makes zero sense. I don't understand it, and we continue to see the lack of consistency in standards between movements that you would think there should be some type of standardization. Like if you can front squat and you can squat clean the front or can't squat clean the front squat, you shouldn't have been able to squat clean the thruster, or vice versa. So I don't understand it. But again, I think we've got to start to create some type of standardization with some of these standards in these online qualifiers.
And I know that in particular with these team ones, we had a double, triple, quadruple check. We were seeing the videos that they were putting out didn't match the floor plans, or the floor plans didn't match the description, in terms of which way they were facing or how it was set up. And I mean, when you're really just trying to make sure you're checking all your boxes and these things are contradictory, it just sucks. It takes extra time. You're freaking out the whole time to make sure your video is going to get validated or potentially invalidated for something you think you were following the rules on. That was just kind of the hardest thing for me during that team space. And where were the burpees?
Yeah.
That's crazy. No team synchro burpees, no line facing or worm style, any of them. Crazy.
Hi, buddy.
You guys are the best. So one thing that, and I think this was on I don't know if it was the CrossFit Games podcast or the Talking Elite Fitness podcast, where Boz was talking about how they kind of go about the review process. And there was a distinction made that movements that have been in competition for a while, they have down exactly how to determine whether or not it's a rep or not a rep, whereas something that's maybe newly introduced, they kind of come to the consensus through the review process. And I'm just curious on both of your thoughts, if you have any on that, not necessarily not to pile on to Boz or to CrossFit, but my opinion would be before you go into the season, exactly what is going to be a rep or not, oh, well, we'll see what the community does. And then based upon the majority or how people interpreted what we came out with, like if that means they need to penalize thousands and thousands of people because they went in with the definition of it, then that should be the case. But I think having a variance between, well, we know this rep, we know this movement, so that's okay. But we didn't know this one, how it would be put into action. So we're going to be a little more lenient. I didn't like that as a strategy. And I don't know if you guys fall on a certain side of the spectrum.
Well, we talked about it with the handstand thing. It wasn't that it was new. It was that it was new and a shock. Like if you had a rule book, change the rule book every year, come out with a new edition at the beginning of every season. And that way, it's on them to review the rule book and see if there were any changes. And if you are talking about the squat cleans, I mean, if it's synchro at the top, who cares if they squat clean it?
Yeah. I think it comes back to creating a whether it's a movement manual, a video manual.
Yeah, why not have a video? Why is everything a static photo?
Yeah, there has to be a better system. If I'm being transparent, it's something we are working on behind the scenes with the PFAA and some of the coaches and things. We're trying to get some changes made. But it's not easy, man. And I don't understand it because I feel like it could be a lot easier. And I think, like you said, I think if we go into the season and we have a clear understanding of what the movement standards are and they're clearly defined and they just stay that way, then there's nothing that you can say, I also think that, like what Dakota was talking about with the rope climb workout, where the rule was now that you could jump up to the rope and you could, do work beyond the 3 minutes. I feel like, and I feel like, again, that sometimes they say that, and then sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to be done by the specific time period, and then now sometimes they're allowing you to go over. I think they need to figure out which one they're picking.
Like anytime there's a lift, as long as the bar's
every single time, in motion or completed. Which one is it? I'm never sure.
Right. Never sure. And that's another one you have to read all the time. And at the end of the day, that can be extremely confusing and can cause a lot of issues for judging as well. So, again, I think that we need to define clear standards. We need to define movement standards, and we need to make it as easy as possible for the judges as we can moving forward, without question. Yeah.
And then my last other thing, just kind of coming full circle, would be: do you think CrossFit is getting a little too maybe far away from its core? Like, if you just look at sports in general, I feel like it keeps expanding in terms of, you have crossover singles and this wall facing. Like, at what point is it's this never ending expanding universe of movement, or does at some point it has to, the rep schemes and the time domains can continue to change, but you kind of operate within a somewhat more selective dome? Obviously, being the fittest does involve a lot of different movements, but if it's just this never ending thing, it's going to come down to who can come up with the most unique, crazy new movement. And I don't know, it competes against what I think more traditional sports that have grown have in their repertoire. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line. And the reason that I say that is because if we're talking about the methodology itself, right? Constantly varied functional movements done at high intensity. I mean, is a crossover single a functional movement? I mean, I don't know about that, but so on the fitness side of things, or the methodology side of things, I certainly would probably agree with you. But then when I look at it from the sports side, what are sports? Sports are entertainment. So if we're thinking about the entertainment side of things, then I think that there is a leg to stand on with some of these unique movements, because when they are practiced and when the athletes can do them with some virtuosity, they're pretty damn cool. And then, people that see them will be like, holy shit, like that's pretty awesome that they can do something like that. I remember, like, the first time we saw the handstand obstacle ramp, which, was a shit show at people falling and this and that. And now it's, it's one of those things that pretty much everybody can do. Like, even regular members are doing it, and so, if we look at it from that perspective, and we're thinking of, okay, eventually, right, my thought process is eventually for this sport to be considered to be a professional sport, and we professionalize it more and more and more. I think the more we professionalize it, the more it's going to separate itself from the traditional methodology. Then I think that we're probably looking at new movements all the time to keep things interesting. However, I'm still a big fan of, well, those movements should be in the manual at the beginning of the year. And if you see it in there, you better practice it, because if it could be coming. But what it shouldn't be is sprung on them last minute to where they don't have where they don't have an opportunity to practice, and where the judges don't have an opportunity to learn the standards. That's where I have the issue.
Do you think that competes with, like, the Open's accessible to everybody and everybody participates? But do you think at some point in the future, CrossFit sport, like, there's a lot of people who play pickup basketball and stuff, but they don't play at the level of the NBA.
Yeah.
So, and you can say that for any sport. So do you think it's
we lost Sroka. Sroka's frozen.
He's supposed to be the guy too.
I know, his beautiful face is still on there.
Oh,
there he is.
So does at some point in the future the sport separate itself to where you have the sport and the professional side, and it's completely removed from the Open, and the Open's no longer necessarily maybe a thing? I realize it does generate revenue for the sport, but at some point it's hard to see where you transition from the community to a professional sport, and no other sport that's professional in that way it's like the NBA has open tryouts every year,
Correct.
right? And then all of a sudden, if you happen to have a great year, you make a roster. Like,
Yeah,
so
I've been saying this for a while. I do believe that ultimately for it to be where it wants to go, that yes, there's going to have to be separation. And I know that that will disappoint some people. And obviously yeah, sure. Well, but I think that there can be, still some type of affiliate competition.
Like a loser's bracket, right?
Not necessarily even a loser
an
bracket.
NIT tournament for the rest of us.
Correct. I think it could
And
be
I'm
in
fine with that. As long as I can still participate, I just like, as much as I'd be disappointed, I'd also be my happiness for the sport of CrossFit would exceed my disappointment.
I think people would be a little less hard on themselves, honestly, if they had that separation. I think people leaderboard themselves, and the first thing they do is they look at the best score, and then they look at their score, and it's hard not to.
Yeah. But I think for us to get where we want to go with the sport, I do believe that ultimately that they'll have to give it up a little bit. I think that the methodology itself, will always be, what prepares you best for whether it's the CrossFit Games or whatever it's called in the future, or whatever, whether there's multiple big events, kind of like you see in golf, or, a tour or whatever it might be. But I do believe that ultimately we will eventually get to the point where the open doesn't include the Tia Claire Toomeys and the Ricky Garards and the Alex Gazans, et cetera. That I think that will be that'll be a little bit different. We'll see something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting food for thought. Have you seen, it would be cool if it was set up like golf, to where, that way, if you winning the CrossFit Games didn't come down to one weekend, you could get sick that weekend. You could have a stomach bug, you could have something aching, and like the whole season comes down to that. Whereas if it were a total of you winning a certain amount of events or competitions over the course of 6 months, and the elites just had constant, every couple weekends or every month there was an event, and whoever accumulated the most number of points was determined, to be just like people who win the PGA Tour for the year. Each one of those could be a moment in time with earning potential for the athletes, but at the end of the year, the winner of the CrossFit season would be the person who accrued the most points, or something like that.
Yeah, once the winner gets $1 million every single weekend for 52 weekends, we might be a little bit closer to that.
Yeah, a little bit closer to golf. I think that this is actually probably like an episode in itself where we could all come on here and bring our ideas about what's the best way. Because who's to say, well, is it golf or is it F1? Like if you're familiar with F1, where now you're seeing the training camps that are getting more and more popular. Well, it could be this training camp that has this certain number of athletes. This training camp has this certain number of athletes. This training camp has certain, and there's points for not just the individual athletes, but also for the training camps. And that could be for the entire year. And you could go from place to place, and you could have, if you didn't want, Ricky Garard, who was for Underdogs Athletics, say there's 20 competitions and you didn't want Ricky to compete every single weekend. Well, then you pick another 1 or 2 athletes in your stable who goes and competes at that place and then competes at that place. And, so you're looking at, there could be so many different ways to do it that I think would create an unbelievable story and great entertainment for people. And I think that it is the way, to garner bigger sponsors outside the quote unquote fitness realm. Right. That you see at the Super Bowl, or that you see at, we probably wouldn't want certain things, but to me, like, I see people that get angry about, like if a beer sponsor, are you serious? You getting mad about that? Come on. What I mean?
Where it grows. Like,
that's money, baby. Maybe we don't want Marlboro, but but aside from that, like, what else, they're those type of brands, they sponsor the biggest sports in the world. Right. Why wouldn't we want?
Because it's not about the people who necessarily partake in the sport. There's certain products within those verticals, but it's about the audience. And there may be people who are entertained by the CrossFit sport who, it's relatively a very, very fit crowd of people that identify with the sport. But there's people who sit there and suck down Coca-Cola soda and eat poorly but they still maybe like the sport. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So,
when you talked about when you talked about entertainment, it kind of made me think back to the original question, which was like about the movement standards and the methodology, and whether or not crossover singles is directly in line with that methodology. I think you'll never see an influx of new movements because as CrossFitters, we love new things, whether it's like nobles, then rads, then easy, Hayes trainers and all these different trends. I mean, we're, I wouldn't say we're the trendiest people around, but we follow trends constantly. And when you get a new movement, all of a sudden I'm excited about buying a new jump rope and I want to, change the color on my handles and get better at crossover singles so I can put it on my Instagram for 75 people to watch.
Yeah. I think like the interesting thing about your comment in terms of, well, the conversation with entertainment though too, is that in order for the audience of people that are going to be entertained, for that to grow, people also have to understand what the sport is. Yeah. And so people understand basketball, they understand hockey because there's certain rules that are consistent and you know what's going on. When you turn on a basketball game, I could turn it on halfway through, there's a score and not every sport's alike, but if you turn on the CrossFit games and you're like not really sure what's going on, you don't understand terminology, you don't understand the movements, what's a rep, not a rep, is that a heavyweight, not, like, you can't even really become a fan or be entertained because there's too much. And so that's where I think, again, larger conversation, but it's just an interesting idea. Like, how do you grow? Like, the audience needs to grow. That generates more eyeballs, bigger contracts. Like, that's just how things grow, at least in this country. So.
Yeah. And I also think that when we talked about standards, right? Like when you talk, anytime they change a rule in football or basketball, et cetera, it's done in the off season and everybody knows about it prior to the season. It's not introduced mid-season or middle of an event, right? Like so these are things that, that I think are the inconsistencies that we talk about. Mm-hmm. And again, I think we're in a world now, where you look at look at a sport like a made for TV sport like Ninja Warrior and how popular that got. I think that CrossFit could have that level of interest because you look at they're superheroes, honestly. I mean, like what these people do. And if you had a reality TV show or you had better marketing or in my opinion, it wasn't so niche and you figured out a way, whether it's Netflix or whether it's one of, Amazon Prime or something else, and you created some type of a story, I understand what you just said before about how, yes, it would be hard to follow, but honestly, like until you understand football or tennis, like those rules are crazy. Like we know that because we've been around forever and they've been around forever. But if all it would take is people to watch it a couple times. And, at the end of the day, it's a race. You understand you're going from here to here and you're doing things on the way. You're completing movements and tasks, for the most part. Right. And so, the more that they familiarize themselves with that, but at the end of the day, if you created it as a human story and there was entertainment and there were, there's a lot of personalities, let's be honest. I mean, let's look at Underdog's camp alone, like what's happened in the last, 2 years, with the people that we've had come and the people we've had go. We've had some of the most polarizing athletes in the entire sport. And that could be super interesting because that's the truth at every camp. I mean, if we're being honest, and if you got a camera behind the scenes on some of the things that I've heard about that have gone on at some of the other camps too, I mean, people would be glued to their televisions.
HBO Hard Knocks.
That's correct. Yeah. It'd be super interesting.
30 for 30 Hard Knocks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So cool.
Well, that'll be a cool, fun future episode. I think I'm interested in Kiefer. It's almost good he's not here for this preliminary conversation. He'd probably be ripping me to shreds.
Oh yeah, we would have completely opposite views on things. Yeah, as usual, but makes things interesting. I know we wanted to get into the age group stuff, but we're running a little bit low on time. But in general, I was a fan of most of the age group workouts. I know, that there had, when Rich Froning comes out and says that it's the most boring workout in the history of the world, or the most boring workout that he's ever done, CrossFit's probably going to take some heat. And that was for that, shuttle run, bench press, rope climb workout.
I thought that one was interesting because at their event for Legends, they programmed 100 GHDs, 100 wall balls, and 10 rope climbs, and that was the most boring one I've ever watched before the shuttle run workout.
Yeah, so there it is on the screen. We got to watch it in person. I mean, whatever. It was okay. I think it was a decent capacity test. Obviously people who have a better bench, who are better rope climbers, had a bit of an advantage. You could be a gun at shuttle runs, and if you struggled at bench press and you struggled at rope climbs, you would going to have a tough time. So obviously it pays to be a little bit stronger there. And I think they could have probably cut down the shuttle runs and still had it, be very similar at the finishes. I don't think it had to go quite as long, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. I thought that was fine. We could take a quick look and just run through the other ones.
It was interesting having the 14 and 15-year-olds get to do a max clean, though.
Yeah. I thought, and the fact that you saw I thought it was crazy on the female side. You had 14 or 15-year-old hit 225, which is just wild, bro. Yeah, we had the dumbbell walking lunges and the total bar, the walking lunge, chest to bar.
I really liked this one, actually.
I thought this was a great workout.
Yeah, like if you're gymnastics inclined, you'd think you have an advantage, but if you also have good fitness, like we saw it, we had one really good gymnast and one really, really, really freaky fit chick, and they ended up, about the same time.
Yeah.
With different strategies, but I thought it was a good combo.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Very, very. I thought this was a well-programmed workout. Workout 2 was the handstand push-up workout. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. I'm not I'm not a huge fan of the workout. I would have liked to have seen a little bit different. It came down to be a handstand push-up workout. I mean, you just saw
change the GHDs too. I don't understand what those are doing.
Yeah, the GHDs were a throwaway, and I think that workout is. I think GHDs is a movement that can punish people if they aren't great at them, and I would have liked to seen that a little bit different as far as the rep scheme is concerned. The workout really did come down to just chest to wall handstand push-ups.
Yeah.
But then it was cool to see. I like to see the clean at the end of this. I thought it was cool. I'm always a big fan of the.
Was there a step down standard with the box jumps?
No, you could jump down, but the truth of the matter is that it really didn't make any sense, because unless you were just so unbelievably good at the chest to wall handstand push-ups, you could step down, and it just the 9 GHDs and the 12 box jumps were like the perfect amount of time to be able to just to stay unbroken. Or for people who struggled on them, you were going slow anyway, so that when you got back to the chest to wall handstand push-ups, you had to rest. You know what I mean? You had plenty of time.
I was coming through the angle of they made that a safety thing in the open where you had to step down, 2 years ago?
Yes.
And then now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I guess if you're into this thing, it's no longer a safety issue.
I would have loved to have seen them institute the step down, especially at 24 and 30-inch box jumps. When I saw that, I did not like the idea of having 14 through 17-year-olds doing bounding box jumps off of 30 and 24-inch boxes.
Yeah.
I just
100
didn't
reps.
think it was necessary. Didn't think it was necessary. So we actually had our athletes step down, and I don't think it affected them too much. And then that 15.5, it was repeat 15.5. I remember doing this in 2015, and it looked just as nasty as I remember. But I really actually liked it. I liked it. It was one of those workouts that people who were on the bubble, they had to go for it. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those workouts, a classic CrossFit couplet that, if you wanted to make it to the next level, if you wanted to get to semifinals, you had to hurt. And I really liked it. I was fine with it. As far as a capacity test, I did like it. So yeah, I thought they were fine. I thought that they served their purpose. I was very, it was really cool to see the improvement from some of our athletes. Obviously, we had one athlete who was in the 16s and 17s last year. She's in the 16s and 17s again this year, and I think she bumped up like 40 spots.
Oh yeah,
which is
huge.
great to see.
Yeah.
And then obviously Maya, making semis this year in the 14 to 15 division, and Kendall, and then obviously our masters around the world who made it. So, we have now completed all the quarterfinals. So we now know who's moving on to semis in all divisions. So we're now right in the middle of semis prep for the next stage. We'll wrap this up, but just kind of like a parting thought on it. The programming obviously has beefed up a little bit for those of our athletes around the world who are following it. They've noticed that the loads have gotten a little bit heavier. The skill work has gotten a little bit harder. Some of the strongman movements and some of the movements that we don't see for the open and quarterfinals, they now see it in their programming. Specifically things like yokes and some of the other machines and some of the
pegboard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big fan. I love this part of the season. I love this style of training. That we see for semis in the games. And I'm super stoked. Just booked my first travel for Pasadena. I'll be booking Berlin pretty soon. And then obviously we'll be ramping up as we get to semifinals for all the age groups, individual and age groups, as we move forward. Any parting thoughts from you, Dakota?
No, I definitely don't want to get into a whole nother convo. Maybe next time we could talk about some off-season competing for like those that aren't at the semis level, or the 97.9% of people who aren't going on. Because we were talking about that this morning, me and all the girls, different off-season comps that we're looking at, ones we want to try and get our feet wet for some extra experience, or potentially some earnings.
Yeah, let's bring that up for next week. That's a great. We take 10 minutes and talk about some of the upcoming comps for sure. Shroka, anything else, bro?
No, just one question about semis. The workouts this year, I know last year there were one standardized that CrossFit programmed. CrossFit's now programming all of them.
Yep.
That mean all the workouts are the same across all semis?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Is that, I mean, if you're the first semifinal to go, you feel a little like disadvantaged because, I mean, we talked about this a little, you don't have a whole lot of time to practice, right? Like if you're the following weekend, you can't possibly practice every single workout. You'll kill yourself before you get to your competition.
True. And if you have that advantage, everyone has that advantage. So it's not that it's necessarily unfair.
But do they release them for the first week, for the first semis? Do you get like a week? Do they tell the athletes the weekend before? And then
I'm not sure what they're going to do, but the good thing about it is that anyone who's competing the first weekend, you're only competing against the people at that semifinal. So you don't have to worry about the second week or the third week. And then there's no like last chance qualifier, or there's no like, taking the scores from the people who, top 3 or top 5. There's none of that. So essentially we're seeing like anyone at North America East. Yes, you're at a slight disadvantage if you look at it compared to the rest of the world, but that's really only for scores, because the people in the week 2 and people in week 3 will get to practice more, but you're only competing against the people in your quote unquote continent. I like to say region, because it's not specifically like one continent, but it's it is for sure like I think it the way that they're doing it, I kind of like, in the sense that the programming is standardized. It is nice to be able to compare a little bit between the regions. We haven't been able to do that the last few years, and I'm curious to see what they're going to do. I think everyone is expecting, from what we've seen from Boz at the games, open, quarterfinals, we're probably looking at, some unique movements. Have you been practicing? Are you picking the right ones, essentially? Without question, you're seeing a wide variety of things in our programming. Where you're, there's a lot of crossover work, a lot of that some of the things that you saw at the games the year before. There's been a tendency to then see it during semifinals the next year. So, legless pegboard, they were going to do legless rope climbs with a legless descent from a seated position at the game. So those are things that, that's the thing that they alpaca that got thrown out. So who knows? We might see that this
Same
year.
Workout, repeat it, just
right.
give it another go.
Absolutely. See it. You might see it the way that it was intended. Right. So all those things are interesting and pretty cool. But my hope is that it's not too gimmicky, and it's things that we've seen, and ultimately, what I would like to see is the fittest people get through, and not necessarily someone who's just really good at one specific skill.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, that's the goal of the games, right, is to find the 3 fittest men, the 3 fittest women, and 3 fittest teams by the end. And I think in the past we've seen that, and I'm hoping that that's the case, that we don't miss, a couple of people in semifinals because of a kitschy skill. That's something I wouldn't like to see.
My prediction is that there will be the use of the new Woodway Rogue running apparatus.
Yeah, I think
it's a new machine. So I feel like that's going to show up in semis. For sure, probably at the games, but I think that'll be a cool thing.
Yeah. And I think that that's one way to, if you have running at semis, it'd be very hard to standardize it from region to region unless it's on a runner.
Right.
So I would think that there's a good possibility that we're going to see those for sure. Plus, I mean, it's a plug for Rogue. I mean, Rogue is, they're taking over the world basically.
Yeah,
so
basically.
Cool. All right, boys. Well, this was a great episode. Dakota, thank you very much. Sroka, you're the man. This is all of us from In the Doghouse signing out. We'll see y'all next week.